Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stay Connected with the Worcester Senior Center. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Hirsch, the Medical Director for the Division of Public Health for the City of Worcester. And here we are with our October edition. Very excited about October. It's the first full month of fall, and I think most of us agree that fall in New England is one of the most beautiful seasons around. Thousands of people come from all over the place to do their leaf peeping, and we'll get to the peak of that probably around what used to be called Columbus Day, which is now sometimes called Indigenous Peoples Day. Whatever it is, it's the second Monday of October, and we are going to have a very beautiful season this year from all description because of the level of drought that we've had over the summer. The leaves are going to be very spectacular. So it's one of my favorite times of the year because we have kind of that nice crisp weather at night, and then in the day can get fairly warm. As a matter of fact, there's this phenomenon called Indian summer that people talk about that ends up getting you some days in the high 70s, even in the 80s as you get into October. So it's all good. This used to be the 8th month of the year when the Romans ruled the world. From October is the short Latin phrase for 8. But when Pope Gregory got a hold of the calendar and changed it, it kept its name, but it became the 10th month instead of the 8th month. And then the flower for this month is the marigold, which is kind of a good pick because it has that kind of a yellow gold look to it. So you'll see a lot of that in flower pots and in sales around supermarkets. Marigolds are beautiful, but they are a little bit harsh on the nasal passages. They kind of smell, but they're beautiful, no question. And the stone, if you're into that, there's actually two of them. There's the green tourmaline stone and then the opal. The opal can be lots of different colors. I've seen red opals, blue opals. They're always very iridescent with lots of little specks of light in them, quite beautiful. So it's a great time of the year for kids. They've kind of gotten settled back in school. They're generally, starting with their sports teams or their arts and crafts or their drama programs or dance classes, whatever it is, they're in the thick of it. And they're getting ready for Halloween, which is, their favorite holiday generally in the year, October 31. So we'll talk about some things that happen in October and some public health things. So I'll start by just saying there's a lot of diseases whose organizations that try to raise awareness about the diseases make October their own. This is the month for recognizing folks with visual impairment. And we have a very wonderful group of advocates here in Worcester that have helped to redesign a lot of the walkways and curb access to make it easier for people that use the white cane to navigate the streets when they're visually impaired. Liz Milka is one of those people, and she's helped us with walkways to school as well for the Worcester Public Schools. Then we have an awareness of, this is the awareness month for walking to school. There's a lot of push around the country to get back to the time when a kid could safely walk to school. Now, there's a lot of impediments to that. Some of it is too much traffic. Some of that is too much crime. Some of that is just deteriorating sidewalks and pathways. a lot of that is getting looked into by the Department of Transportation and Mobility as we look at the project they're doing to try to reduce pedestrian injuries. And I think there'll be some better opportunities for kids to walk to school over the years. It's a great thing to be able to do. So hopefully we'll see that improve. This is also a month that honors a whole bunch of very important immigrant groups to the United States. This is a National Italian American Recognition Month. It's also National Polish American Recognition Month. And the first half of the month also honors Hispanic immigrants and also German American immigrants. Why am I even emphasizing that? It's because we are a country of immigrants. Almost none of us can claim direct relations back to the Pilgrims or to the settlers in Virginia in the 1600s. All of us migrated here, and it seems like now the word immigrant is associated with bad things, and it shouldn't be. My parents were immigrants from Europe. They came here after the Holocaust and built a beautiful life, and I'm so grateful that this is the kind of country that people still aspire to come to. But we have some dark times going on. We have, as I mentioned last month, there's a lot of fear going on because of the policies of the new ICE and Homeland Security Administration. People are getting pulled off the street. People are having their immigration status investigated after they've been here 20, 30 years and have had children here and have worked here and paid taxes here. All of those things are going on, and I don't think it makes a good look for the United States. So those groups, if you're part of those groups, I would applaud that you came here and gave your expertise and your hard work and your wonderful cuisine to our country. And I hope that you continue to make great contributions, as I know you will. Then on the overall overarching October situation, this is a month where quite commonly the holiest day in the Jewish religion occurs, and that's Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this, the Jewish New Year follows the lunar pattern, so it usually comes sometime in September, and that's called Rosh Hashanah, and that means welcome the new year. On the day of Rosh Hashanah, allegedly, God opens up the book of life and he investigates you over the next 10 days, which are called the days of awe. And on the 10th day, on the Day of Atonement, you commemorate that by spending the entire day in the synagogue, if you're a practicing person. And there you atone for the fear that you have that your year didn't measure up, and that when God writes your name in the book of life, that you're not a sure thing to have another year like that. So this year, Yom Kippur is officially on October 2nd. It starts the night of October 1st, and it's a very important holiday for all of our Jewish inhabitants, and I wish everyone that does practice a safe fast. On Yom Kippur, practicing Jews fast for 24 hours. So the next big date that I can tell you about is October 11th. That's Kazimierz Pulaski Day. Kazimierz Pulaski was a brilliant cavalryman who came from Poland and volunteered his services to General George Washington during the War for Independence, the Revolutionary War. Seeing his talent immediately, the General Washington and his staff made Pulaski in charge of Continental Cavalry. And he accomplished some great things in the battle in Brandywine and in Monmouth, but unfortunately he was killed in action. And they have this day to honor him, and that's why this is also Polish American Recognition Month. So if you are a Polish American, Kazimierz Pulaski is a wonderful hero to celebrate. And this next several years is, the 250th anniversary of our inception as a country, and Kazimierz had a lot to do with that. So then on the 13th, that is traditionally known as Columbus Day. It's the second Monday of every October. Columbus has become a controversial figure. He's Italian. He's been a great traditional hero amongst our Italian Americans. But he, truth be told, brought a lot of misery to the indigenous people here in the United States. He and his crew carried with them diseases that the indigenous people had never been exposed to, so there was a lot of outbreaks of syphilis and other diseases that killed many, many of the indigenous people. He also killed them in battle and enslaved them. And he was not a very kind person that way. So there's been a big movement to try to change Columbus Day into Indigenous Peoples Day, and about a third of the states have done something like that. We kind of are straddling that here in Massachusetts. We still recognize Columbus Day, I think more out of respect to Italian Americans that are here, and then of course the Indigenous Peoples Day, because certainly in Massachusetts we recognize almost every other street is a word that's been co-opted from Indian language. Where our wonderful university Holy Cross sits was the Wampanoag village that was the main center of activity for the tribes that lived in this area. And it does seem kind of sad that there's not much other recognition of the amazing luck that we had that we could come to this country in those early pilgrim days and make our way across the country all the way to California, unfortunately displacing a lot of those indigenous people. So think about that. If you're celebrating Columbus Day, give a little bit of thought to the people that were displaced and dishonored by the settler movement. And then on October 13th, that same day, is also called U.S. Navy Day. And it's impossible to quantify how important the contributions of the U.S. Navy were to maintaining our freedom from the earliest days of John Paul Jones and his heroic work on the Continental Navy to right down recently to shooting Tomahawk missiles at the Houthi rebels in Yemen. World War II, the Pacific Theater, was, the sweat of the Navy in general that got us through an island hopping campaign that eventually brought Japan down. Of course, the Marines are part of the Navy, and those two branches of the armed forces really did the lion's share of work in the Pacific. Not to say the Army didn't have its share, but a lot of those amphibious landings, that was on the Navy landing the Marines safely on these various atolls and islands around the Pacific. And the next big day that I can come up with, again, is Halloween. Halloween traditionally was thought to be a time, a day, a night when ghosts and spirits would be floating around in the air, because the next day was it was called All Saints' Day, was a Roman Catholic holiday that honored all the saints, especially the ones that were martyred. And over time, Halloween became much more of a kids' holiday, where you would get a trick or a treat if you went around and knocked on people's doors. It's just a joyous thing to see a bunch of little kids coming down the sidewalk to your house, and you have to have some candy ready, or you have to have some something bagged as far as chips or something else. People are not going to accept the old-fashioned apple because of some crazies, maybe 30, 40 years ago, putting razor blades and pins and nails inside of the stuff. So anything that you give away or anything that you get should be individually wrapped. And you have to make sure nowadays, unfortunately, that some joker doesn't put in an edible marijuana candy, edible inside mixed with the candy. So it takes a lot of supervision, but some grown-up should be looking at what it is that your little granddaughter or daughter or son are collecting before they start shoveling it in their mouths. There are some dentists in the area that actually will take the candy that you collect, and in exchange for the candy, they'll do fluoride washings, or they will potentially give you something that they look at as healthier than some of the candies that are given out. Whatever it is a lot of fun to see the dress-ups and the different activities that the kids participate in school. A lot of the schools do their own trick-or-treating because they don't want the kids out on the street at night. And it can be very cold. It can certainly be very dark. So I would urge you to always make sure that there's a good reflector on your kids as they're walking around, and that there's good adult supervision. Sometimes an older sibling is all you need, but sometimes the older siblings have their own problems in paying attention to crosswalks and things like that. What I wanted to emphasize about this month is that what we have seen now that the Worcester Public Schools are back in session is that the vaccination rate has maintained itself at a very high level. Not as high as it had been. It was as high as 97% vaccination rates in 2024, but we think it's going to be coming out at around 95% this year. That's still enough to give us a good level of herd immunity. You heard me use that term before, where if enough people are vaccinated, it's very unlikely we're going to have outbreaks. However, over in Western Mass, the Mass Department of Public Health just had statistics that showed the vaccination rate had gone down to 90%. That's too low. That gives a window for outbreaks to happen. Anything less than 93% is at risk for having measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, pertussis, all of those diseases that we had conquered with vaccine to rear their ugly head. If you combine with that in Western Massachusetts, all of those leaf peepers that I mentioned before that come as tourists, if there's a bunch of those folk that are not vaccinated, they could also be the vector of spread, and before you know it, you have an outbreak. Now, I'm not saying you're going to have an outbreak. I'm just saying that these are battles that already have been won and now are only coming back to be potential battles because the disinformation and the misinformation about vaccinations, particularly promulgated by our Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., have led a lot of people to have questions, doubts, hesitation about vaccines. And I spoke to one of the head of ambulatory pediatrics, the outpatient pediatric group at UMass, and they all say, all of the pediatricians in that group say they're spending much more time than they want to trying to justify, trying to explain the use of these vaccines. And I'm not blaming the people for being confused about it, and I'm not blaming the people for asking questions about it. You should ask questions about your own health. The problem is everybody is under the time clock when a well child visit happens or a sick child visit happens. There's just not enough time to cover in greatest detail all of these issues. And it was kind of settled for a long time that, you know, the pediatrician told you, well, this is the schedule of vaccines that we recommend, and people just accepted it. But now there's doubt. Now there is hesitation. And because of that, we're seeing the levels go down a little bit. Now, Massachusetts is still looked at as the #1 state for vaccinated children. The overall rate for the state is 95%. So that's really good. But it used to be even higher. So we're going to have to spend a lot of time as physicians, as pharmacists, as public health officials to do the explaining that will hopefully build up the confidence again that these vaccines are okay. Now, that's just the kiddie vaccines I'm talking about. As far as COVID vaccines and flu vaccines, the number of people getting them, the number of people that have gotten boosters this fall, been very low. Percentage-wise, you know, I would say less than 25% of the people are getting those. And I think in the end, we're going to pay for that. We've had an uptick of COVID. The variant that we have now started in mid-July. Beginning of July, we only had 400 COVID cases in a week here in Massachusetts. Now we have about 1,800 to 2,000 a week. The COVID that's going around now, if you have a bad case of it, it gives you a really sore throat. That's being called razor blade COVID. But most of the people that have COVID, they may not even know they have COVID. They may mistake it for allergies, colds. But in the emergency department, a lot of the people that are coming in for other reasons, when they get tested, they have COVID. So we had 1,800 cases last week of COVID, which is, 6 times as many as we had the beginning of July. And COVID in general has not been a summertime, fall problem. It's really gotten bad when we start going indoors. By the end of October, we'll be going indoors. We'll be watching basketball games. We'll be, going to assemblies. We'll be spending a lot of time, in church or synagogue, whatever brings us indoors. And that's when COVID really likes to spread. So we'll see if this holds up, that this version of COVID is not putting a lot of people in the hospital. It's not putting a lot of people in the ICU. But, the Department of Public Health is always on alert, and we're trying to arrange now to make COVID vaccinations and flu shots available in some public clinics. And I would just stay tuned, look at the website for the City of Worcester on public health. There'll be some announcements about where these clinics will occur. And hopefully, if you want to be sure about your health moving forward, I think you can take those two shots together, flu and COVID, and I think you can take them without fear. The mRNA vaccine, there have been anecdotal reports of people that have been harmed by the vaccine, but it's such a very, very, very small fraction of the millions of people who got the vaccine. And it's estimated in the United States that the vaccine saved over 1.5 million people. I don't think there's any question that we've tested it out enough to know that it is safe. Does it cause some problems in some people? Yes. But public health is all about the greatest good for the greatest number. And every time we have a mishap, we feel bad about it. But for every mishap, there's another 1,000 people that do well with this. So I would urge you to get it. The CDC has said the only people that they recommend get it are people over 60, people that are obese, people that have cardiovascular problems, people that have pulmonary problems, people that have immune problems, people that have cancer. Those are the people they're recommending get it. They don't necessarily recommend it for adults younger than 60. They don't recommend it for pregnant women. They don't recommend it for children. But that's not what we are doing in Massachusetts. Governor Healy, along with our Mass Department of Public Health Chief, Robbie Goldstein, have joined in a consortium of states in the Northeast, Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, are all in a consortium where we are making our vaccination policies fit what we think is the science behind them. And so in Massachusetts and in all those states, if you want a vaccination, you will be able to get one. No insurance company can deny coverage for the vaccination. And all of the drugstore companies are going to be carrying the vaccination. 16 southern states have CVSs that are not carrying the COVID vaccine, which is very silly. So we're fighting that off as much as we can here in Massachusetts. So I don't think that you should have a problem with getting the vaccination that you want. But if you are, I would write into our helpline, which is right on our website at www.worcesterma.gov, and we'll make sure that we can get some vaccinations for you. It's not like the old days. We're not doing the testing anymore. We're not. That is something that we're asking you as a citizen to do on your own. That if you feel like you have a cold, but it's more than a cold, get a test kit at one of the drugstores. And if you have it, try to keep yourself isolated for at least 5 days. If you don't have any fever during that time over the last day, and you're not taking Tylenol to get the fever down, then I think you should be good to go back to work. If you want to be super considerate, if you have people at work that are potentially in that high-risk group that I mentioned, wear a mask for another 5 days. You don't have to necessarily isolate or distance yourself or whatever, but wearing a mask is a courtesy for the other folk in your place. While I'm on the subject of Tylenol, you probably heard in the last few weeks that some very, very shaky science led to a press conference with President Trump and HHS Secretary and FDA guru Mehmet Oz. Mehmet Oz was one of my medical students way back when, and not really happy with how he has evolved. But they have found an association between pregnant women who took Tylenol and autism. It is a very, very sketchy, non-scientific paper that they're quoting. And an association is not proof of causality. So let's say you have 50 pregnant women and 10 of them took Tylenol and five of those women had children with autism. Yeah, that's an association, but it's not proof that the Tylenol caused the autism. So, this is the great quest of RFK Jr. He wants to find a cause for autism. What he has done instead is he's made a lot of moms of autistic kids feeling guilty or ashamed, like wondering, oh gosh, did I do this to my kid? Because I did take Tylenol when I had that really excruciating migraine that time. And number two, the autistic kids, as they grow and they hear this stuff, they feel like, oh my God, the worst thing in the world is to have an autistic kid. The worst thing in the world is to be autistic. They are themselves feeling isolated and shamed about what they are. And it was rolled out in such a inconsiderate way, because the other piece of it is that they really didn't offer a lot of alternatives for people that had need for Tylenol. You don't want a mom with a high fever when they're pregnant, right? You don't want a mom with a severe migraine when they're pregnant. You can't take things like Advil or Aleve because they have properties that can lead to internal bleeding. It doesn't happen to regular folk, but the state of pregnancy involves a lot of extra blood flow around the baby that could cause a bleed. And that's why those kind of common painkillers are not that available. Can't take aspirin because that can also cause a syndrome called Reye's syndrome. So the only one that was really left is Tylenol. Now Tylenol has been shown for 60 years to be very safe. If you take too much of it, it can really do damage to your liver. But in the appropriate dosage, it has not shown really any ill effects. So I think that it's another area where we're just now going to spend a lot of time in the obstetrician's office explaining to pregnant moms, it's okay to take Tylenol, don't worry about it. Or in the pediatric clinic, it's okay, it's not your fault. This autism is not caused by the Tylenol you took when you had a headache when you were pregnant. It's a brave new world for all of us in public health, all of us in primary care, to try to undo a lot of the misinformation that's out there about this problem. It's unnecessary, but we signed up for this, so we're going to continue to try to fight the misinformation. So I have wonderful colleagues at the Worcester Department of Public Health that are out there trying to dispel a lot of these notions that Bobby Kennedy is spreading. I've been on the radio, I've been in the paper, I've been here talking to you about this, and I hope you'll spread the word that I think that you should listen to the Mass Department of Public Health, Robbie Goldstein, and we at the Worcester Department of Public Health will be taking their lead. And it's not just isolated Massachusetts thing now. Now we have a consortium of these wonderful other states that are going to be coming up with a consensus of what the right approach should be. And maybe we can countervene some of the misinformation campaigns that have been coming out of Atlanta and Washington. So I'm very optimistic that we are going to be able to have a healthy fall going into winter. I'm hoping that you do the right thing for yourself and your families and have the kiddies vaccinated, get yourself vaccinated, and make sure that you're not holding back Tylenol from your pregnant loved ones for a very unfounded reason. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye and look forward to seeing you in November. November, is the transitional month where we get to eat some turkey with our loved ones, and it should be a wonderful fall season here in New England. So enjoy it. Get out there and walk or take a leaf peeping drive, and we'll see you next month.